Hello, this is Paula at the Barkman Branch Library, and this is Paula's Picks at Barkman. Since we've been closed these months, we have gotten a lot of new picture books that you haven't got to see. So I thought I would read some of the best ones today. The first one I'm going to read is called A Feast of Peas. It's by Kashmira Sheth, and it is illustrated by Jeffrey Ebler. And this is with permission from Peachtree Publishing Companies Incorporated. A Feast of Peas. Once upon a time, in the country of India, lived a man named Jiva. Every day, Jiva worked in his garden until the sun turned as red as a bride's sari. Jiva planted carrots and beans, potatoes and tomatoes, eggplants and okra, but he was most excited about his peas. As Jiva planted them, he sang, "Plump peas, sweet peas, lined up in the shell, peas, peas to munch, peas to crunch. I want a feast of peas for lunch." The peas were the first ones to sprout. Jiva hoed the rows, watered the seedlings, and waited. Soon the vines rambled over the soil. Jiva weeded and watered the garden and waited some more. In time, the plants were covered with delicate blossoms. Birds flew overhead. Jiva scratched his head, wondering how to keep them away from his peas. Then Jiva snapped his fingers. He had an idea. He built a scarecrow out of sugarcane stalks and dressed it with an old dhoti, a shirt, and a red turban. Jiva waited some more. The pea flowers turned into tiny pea pods, and the tiny pea pods turned into big pods. Soon it would be time for the Feast of Peas. Ruvji came to visit. "Jiva, some of your peas look plump," he said, smacking his lips. "I'll pick them tomorrow," Jiva said, "and then I'll have a feast of peas." He sang, "Plump peas, sweet peas, lined up in the shell, peas, peas to munch, peas to crunch. I want a feast of peas for lunch." "Peas are delicious," Ruvji said. "I would enjoy a feast of peas." When Jiva got up the next morning, the sun was peeking over the horizon. He hurried to the garden to harvest the peas. They had vanished. Jiva examined the scarecrow. It still stood watch. Just then Ruvji came by. "Who ate my peas?" Jiva asked in a soft, sad voice. "Maybe rabbits ate them," Ruvji said. "Look, there are some tiny pea pods. Soon you'll have more peas." Jiva scratched his head, wondering how to keep the rabbits away. The scarecrow wouldn't help. Then Jiva snapped his fingers. He had an idea. Jiva put a fence around the garden. A few days later, there were more peas in Jiva's garden. Ruvji visited again. "Jiva, some of your peas look plump," he said, smacking his lips. "Yes," Jiva said, "I'll pick them tomorrow, and then I'll have a feast of peas." He sang, "Plump peas, sweet peas, lined up in the shell, peas, peas to munch, peas to crunch. I want a feast of peas for lunch." "Peas are delicious," Ruvji said. "I would enjoy a feast of peas." When Jiva got up the next morning, the sun was peeking over the horizon. He hurried into the garden to harvest the peas. They had vanished. Jiva examined his scarecrow. It still stood watch. Jiva examined the fence. It was secure. Just then Ruvji came by. "Who ate my peas?" Jiva asked. "Maybe a ghost ate your peas," Ruvji whispered. "Look, there are some tiny pea pods. Soon you'll have more peas." Jiva scratched his head, wondering how to keep a ghost away. The scarecrow wouldn't help. The fence wouldn't help. Then Jiva snapped his fingers. He had an idea. A few days later, Ruvji visited again. "Jiva, some of your peas look plump," he said, smacking his lips. "I'll pick them tomorrow," Jiva said. He sang, "Plump peas, sweet peas, lined up in the shell, peas, peas to munch, peas to crunch. I want a feast of peas for lunch." "Peas are delicious," Ruvji said. "I would enjoy a feast of peas." The next morning, just before the sun came out, a ghost appeared in the garden. It stepped over Jiva's fence. It bowed to Jiva's scarecrow and asked, May I have some peas, please? Then the ghost answered his own question. Of course, you may have as many peas as you please. The ghost bowed again. Why, thank you. Quickly, he picked all the peas and dropped them in a pouch. The ghost was about to leave when the scarecrow came alive. May I take those peas you've picked? The ghost trembled. The scarecrow answered his own question, mimicking the ghost's voice. Of course, you may take all the peas. The scarecrow extended his hands. The ghost dropped his pouch. As the scarecrow walked toward him, the ghost fled. Down the street and up the alley, the scarecrow chased the ghost. They ran past the temple and through the market. The ghost ran all the way to the river. He dove into the water. He looked back to see if the scarecrow was following him. Instead, he saw a big crowd watching him from the shore. He had been tricked. Ruji took off his mask as he came out of the water. Jiva, I'm sorry for stealing your peas and trying to fool me and to scare me, Jiva said. You must pay for what you have done. Ruji looked at the ground. What's my punishment? He asked. Jiva scratched his head, wondering what to do. Then he snapped his fingers. Ruji, you can cook a feast of peas for me, he said, smacking his lips. Later that day, Ruji shelled and boiled the peas. He steamed and simmered the peas. He fried and spiced the peas. He made a feast of peas. When Jiva sat down to eat, there were peas with rice and spice, peas wrapped in mashed potato pockets, and peas swimming in soup. Jiva tasted the soup. Delicious, he said, taking another spoonful. Then he put it down and snapped his fingers. You also love peas, Ruji. Let's have a feast of peas together. The two friends sang, plump peas, sweet peas, lined up in the shell, peas, peas to munch, peas to crunch. We have a feast of peas for lunch. Last picture. Now he's taken the tomatoes. And then I would like to read you a second book called The Truth About Wind by Hazel Hutchins and Gail Herbert, illustrated by Dusan Petrasic. And this is with permission from Access Copyright on behalf of Anik Press. Jesse heard the creaking sound first. A wagon was moving along the path behind his yard. Shapes flickered beyond the fence. A man, a girl, someone little in a wagon, and one smaller shape that remained after the wagon had gone. Jesse peered between the boards. Looking brightly back at him from the tall, wild grasses was a horse. A horse, the color of a crow's wings, all shiny and black. No one was in sight. Jesse coaxed the horse with clover and dandelions to the safety of his yard. He built a perfect stable behind the shed. Jesse's mother smiled when she came to put her gardening tools away. Where did you get this fine fellow? She asked. Grandma, Jesse answered quickly. He runs faster than any horse in the world, so I have named him Wind. Wind raced across the tabletop prairie and up and over rolling cauliflower hills while Jesse ate supper. He leaped deep canyons and sailed above tall waterfalls while Jesse had his bath. Jesse is having a wonderful time with the horse you gave him, Mother told Grandmother during the evening phone call. Other Grandma, called Jesse as Wind slid down a soapy slope from an old box. For there had been a box once, although it had never held a shiny black horse. Only when lying in bed, with Wind asleep on the pillow beside him, did Jesse begin to have an uneasy feeling in his stomach. He pushed it away by telling the moon the true story of an entire kingdom of wild horses running as fast and free as the wind. All that week, Wind lived up to his name. galloping up the slide at the park, racing along the river path, and splashing through puddles at glorious speed. Jessie grew to love wind more and more, but the uneasy feeling grew stronger. Snack time, Jessie suddenly told Win at the grocery store. He carefully tucked the horse and a lettuce leaf into the bottom of his backpack. And at the library, where Win galloped down the hall to send the posters on the message board fluttering, lost horse. Jessie quickly turned him back to the safety of the shelves. It's better here, Jessie explained. We can play hide and seek. Another lost horse. Each day now, Jessie became more watchful. Jessie had decided there's a troll living under the bridge, Mother said with a sigh on her evening phone call to Grandmother. We had to walk home the long way around. Then other Grandmother called. Mother handed Jessie the phone and whispered, "Say thank you." Jessie had to think quickly. "The box, Grandma, from a long time ago. I found a horse in it. Thank you." He handed the phone back to Mother and added, "I had to remind her. You know how Grandmother forgets things." But Win's head had lowered as Jessie spoke, and they could no longer meet each other's eyes. At supper, Jessie found it hard to swallow the spaghetti he loved. All evening, his stomach was sore. "You're happy here with me, aren't you, Win?" asked Jessie at bedtime. Win did not answer. "Do you want to hear more about the kingdom of horses, Moon?" asked Jessie. The moon stayed silent in the sky. When Jessie finally fell asleep, his dreams broke into shifting pieces like shapes flickering behind a wooden fence. And in the quietest, darkest time of night, Jessie found himself awake and thinking about where wind had really come from. The next morning, even when Jessie offered berries from his cereal bowl and built the most tempting race course around the milk carton, Wind stood unmoving beside Jessie's cup. "Your horse is very quiet today. What's wrong, Jessie?" His mother's voice was gentle, but how could he ever explain? "Not hungry," said Jessie, and he slipped away to the backyard. He sat and sat, and then far down the path came the creaking sound of the wagon. It has been there most mornings, but Jessie had pretended not to hear. This time, however, he returned to Win, saying, "You hear it too, don't you?" He already knew the answer. Jessie gave Win one enormous last hug. He hurried to the fence. He forced himself to hold the horse as far as he could toward the people on the path. A single word rang out into the air: "Midnight!" It was a name so perfect and said with such joy that Jessie's sadness and confusion fell away. The girl ran forward. "You found my horse! You found Midnight!" And the shiny black horse, dark as midnight, fast as wind, raced home. Very sweet book. Now let me read you another one by Marcy Colleen, illustrated by Allison Oliver, The Bear's Garden. And thank you to Macmillan Publishing. In the big, bustling city, all the people were busy. They rushed up and down the street without seeing that some buildings needed paint, that some buildings were empty, and some buildings were gone. But in one girl's imagination, the city was a place to grow, a place to play, a place to love. She could always find beauty around her. One night, the girl's imagination spilled into the sidewalk, rolled across the street, and sprouted. A baby garden. When she spotted the seedling, she introduced herself with a "How do you do?" and a garden party. And that's how it went, day after day. No matter how fierce the sun or how swift the wind, the little girl watched over the seedling. "I believe in you," she whispered every morning and every night. More seedlings soon grew. People rushed by, began to slow down. First, with a tip of the hat or nod of the head. People stopped to smile or say hello to the little girl with the tiny green friends. Then came a time when the girl had to leave for a while. Without her care and without her love, she knew the plants would wither. She wanted to bring the garden with her, but it wasn't possible. She thought maybe she could whisper, "I believe in you," far, far away, but she didn't have enough strength. She tried employing a pigeon, but he was not clearly trained. If the little girl could not take care of the garden, someone else would have to. She filled her bear with cuddles and snuggles, and stuffed him full of hope. She locked button eyes with him and whispered into his ear, "This is a very special mission. Watch the garden until I get back." She kissed him on the top of his head and left him to his job. From miles away, the girl imagined the garden was blooming. She imagined it could be a place to grow, a place to play, a place to love, and it was. I just have one more book for you. It is called Boxitex by Kim Smith. And I'm reading this from permission from Houghton Mifflin Harcourt Publishers. Boxitex. Meg was a boxitech. She loved to make things out of boxes. She loved making tiny houses, tall towers, and twisty tunnels. And she made marvelous things no one had ever seen before. Meg was proud of her work. She could make boxes into anything. Meg's mother was proud too. She thought Meg was brilliant and creative. So Meg's mother sent Meg to Maker School, where she could be even more brilliant and creative. At Maker School, there were blanketeers, spaghetti techs, tin foilers, and egg cartoneers. There was almost any kind of maker you could imagine. But Meg was the class's first boxitech, and that made her feel special. At school, Meg learned all about boxitecture. She learned how to make her structures useful, strong, and beautiful. Meg loved everything about Maker School. Until Simone showed up. Like Meg, Simone was new. She was also brilliant and creative. Worst of all, Simone was a boxitech too. And she was already making things Meg had never dreamed of. Big plane there. In class, Simone would point out ways Meg could make her constructions a little straighter, more wind resistant, and less boring. So Meg told Simone she could build things that were less bumpy, sturdier, and much prettier. On the last day of school, the class's annual maker match was held to see who could make the most amazing thing. There was just one rule. You had to work as a team. But Meg didn't want to work with anyone, and neither did Simone. The blanketeers built with blankets and pillows. The spaghetti techs built with pasta and glue. The bakeologists built with cake and frosting. But the Boxatechs were not building at all. They were arguing. I want to make a treehouse, Meg said. No, I want to make a ship, Simone said. Meg drew a line down the middle of a very large box. I'll take this half, you can have the other. Fine, said Simone. Soon Meg noticed that her treehouse wasn't as large as Simone's ship, so she made her side taller and more impressive. When Simone noticed that Meg's treehouse was taller than her ship, she made her side higher and more extraordinary. Slowly, Meg and Simone creations grew bigger and bigger. They both built and built until there wasn't a single box left. And at last, they finished. What is it? Asked a classmate. I have never seen anything like it, said another. The teacher said, it looks like it might crash. Your side was too wobbly, shouted Meg. Your side was too heavy, said Simone. Oh dear, said the judge. The maker match was not over yet, but most of Meg and Simone's work was ruined. There was only a few parts left that could be saved. If we combine my tree house with your ship, Meg started, we might be able to make one thing, finished Simone. The Boxatechs decided to call a truce so they could finish the match. Working as a team, Meg and Simone quickly joined the remaining pieces together until they had created something new. At the end of the maker match, the Boxatechs hadn't won first place, but they had a different way of making brilliant and creative things, working together. The end. Isn't that? And so, because they built their things with boxes, I have a craft that is making monster boxes. And you can use any sort of box to do this sort of a box, a Kleenex box, even a big box. I'm going to try to show you these. These are some more boxes made of monster boxes. Like, see this one over here? It's just all a bunch of paper. So you need to get a box, and then you need paper, pom-poms, pipe cleaners, anything that you can make a monster with, anything that's in your home. You can just use paper like they did on that one. It was all just paper, cutting out eyes and stuff, and then you can make your own monster box and be a Boxatech. So thank you for listening to my stories, and I will be back. Thank you.